Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bitcoin in 30 Minutes. I'm your host, Vic. And in this episode, what I'd like to go over is why Bitcoin is the new American dream. So, this episode may be a bit controversial, maybe touching on a couple of chords here and there, depending on who you are and what your beliefs are. But hear me out. In 30 minutes, I'm going to make the argument that Bitcoin is the new American dream. So, when I say American dream, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, the American dream could be perceived and understood by different people in different ways. Depends on who you are, really. For me, the American dream is and was the opportunity to get rich. I really didn't have very much as far as the belief that I wanted to own a home or that I wanted to have a very high level of education. I just wanted to be rich. And I didn't know it then, but I know it now that the reason why I wanted to be rich is because I wanted to be comfortable and I wanted to have nice things. As a person who grew up very poor and a person who grew up with um, very poor or absent parents, the American dream to me as a young person was something that seemed to be very possible. As long as the narrative at that time was get your education, get a college degree, maybe go in the military, or do something where you can get an education, go get a job, and voila, it's just going to happen. So, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that that is simply not true today. The American dream is as far away as ever for most young people. There are many reasons for this, in my opinion. One reason, I believe, is because we live in an era of time where technology uh, is converging into efficiencies that cause people to lose their jobs. So, what do I mean by that? Here's a great example. ChatGPT came out about a year and a half ago or whatever, and has now caused coders, people who, write code or do software, build websites for a living to get laid off. As a result of that, there's no income coming in for those people who went to school for that type of skill. Another example, and one that is a documentary, this PBS Frontline made a documentary out of it, was Jeff Bezos and Amazon.com. So if you follow the story of Amazon.com, you'll learn that Jeff Bezos and his website, Amazon.com, systematically gobbled up mom and pop brick and mortar stores and caused the systemic collapse of brick and mortar retail. What I mean by brick and mortar is you go and you drive to a store like Kmart or Walmart, or you drive to the store like a sports and outdoor store like Academy or Dick's Sporting Goods, and you go and get the items that you need rather than ordering a la carte on the internet to get the item that you want anytime you want on with a much wider variety of items. Now we can talk about how Amazon.com is probably the dumbest, most wasteful idea uh, that has been invented in the last 50 years, because what it results in is a la carte, one piece ordering, and the shipping of every single retail item or good or service for the American consumer, which is extremely wasteful and extremely inefficient. Um, but because Americans are consumers, And because they love convenience, this has taken off. But the result of this has caused hundreds of thousands of jobs, if not millions of jobs, throughout the economy to be lost. This is what I mean by the convergence of technologies has caused people to lose jobs, lose wages, and to not be able to achieve the same type of income or earnings that are required to achieve, get to, or maintain the so-called American dream. The American dream today is, in my opinion, dead, DEAD. And the reason why is largely as a result of technology. There are some other reasons. So, for example, in the 1990s, in the Clinton era, where NAFTA resulted in the outsourcing and shipping of manufacturing jobs outside of the United States into third world or lesser cheaper economies such as Mexico, Vietnam, China, South America, and other types, Puerto Rico, and other types of economies that are simply smaller and simply cheaper for goods to be made. As a result, the American family and consumer has had to take a huge pay cut, and that pay cut makes achieving the American dream even more difficult. So now that I have described the American dream and what has happened to it in the last 25 to 30 years, I will now describe why Bitcoin is the only way left to achieve the American dream. The American dream means that you're able to save for a rainy day today and also able to achieve gains or profit and income tomorrow, and to achieve some sort of financial stability or housing stability or education stability with the money that you earn today. Bitcoin, because of its fraction properties, in the sense that you can buy 0.001 Bitcoin, which basically is 0.001 Satoshis. And just a reminder from episode one, there are 100 million Satoshis in a single Bitcoin. You can, so that they appreciate in value, and also you can use them at some point to achieve the American dream. Owning property, in the sense that owning real estate or owning a car or owning stocks, bonds, whatever, that type of American dream, in my opinion, is very, very rare. And it's also going to be very, very much more difficult to achieve given the convergence of technologies in the 21st century. This includes AI, blockchain, it includes robotics. It includes other forms of technologies that will be able to outpace and outcompete the American person. So owning a fraction of a Bitcoin is a big, big, big deal today because they're still affordable. You're able to purchase 0.001 Bitcoin for about, I don't know, 400 or 500 bucks or something like that. That's a big deal. But you can also purchase 0.0001 Bitcoin, a tinier fraction, for like 50 bucks. That 50 bucks over space and time is going to multiply exceedingly by the year 2030. So by the year 2030, that 20 bucks would probably equal to, I don't know, 1,000 bucks or something like that. The reason why is because what is going to happen to the United States dollar as we move forward in the 21st century? In my opinion, and it's not just my opinion, but there are various other people in the world and also in the cryptocurrency and also blockchain space that talk about the tokenization of the US dollar. What do I mean by tokenization? Well, you can go to CoinMarketCap, which is one of the websites that are very frequented by Bitcoiners and other cryptocurrency advocates. But basically, it's a website that lists all the different cryptocurrency tokens that exist, uh, pretty much that exist. In In On that website, you'll see all the different variations of tokens. A token is basically a cryptocurrency coin that is on a blockchain, and it's not really a physical coin. It's basically a data entry. It's a data entry into a financial accounting ledger. So a blockchain, as I mentioned in episodes 1 through 3, is a is a special form of database which basically serves as an accounting ledger that can keep track of not just entries of accounting, but also any other type of data entry in a fixed, secure way that cannot be manipulated or distorted. So let's talk a little bit about the convergence of technologies and how this is going to result and has resulted in the past of mass unemployment. And also the notion, the idea that the government will, as a matter of necessity, have to give people money by way of tax breaks, by way of tax credits, and also by way of coupons and incentives to get people to um, just live basic lives. So this kind of boils down to the fundamentals of government. Government generally, this is just coming from somebody who's been in government for about 20 years at least. Government ordinarily is not there to provide luxurious lifestyles. Payments that come from the government for the benefit of something ordinarily come with strings attached, and they ordinarily come with minimal amount necessary. So here's an example: government food stamps, right? Limits, strings attached. Government lodging, limits, strings attached, not luxurious. So I say this because as the future presses on here, what we're going to experience is more government intervention, more government handouts, and more debasement of the currency. So for those Americans who are living and working uh, for a fair wage, and I'm not even referring to minimum wages, but just for a fair wage, those wages will necessarily not be able to keep up with the inflation and the amount of government spending. And as a consequence to that, the so called American dream will become a mirage. The closer you approach it, the further away it seems. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is a train in the opposite direction. Well, Bitcoin allows, when you purchase a Satoshi, a single, I don't know, 150, 200 Satoshis, and again, 100 million Satoshis equal one Bitcoin. What purchasing a Satoshi allows is it allows you to have a stake in the future of a new digital finance system called based on the Bitcoin blockchain and the monetary policy of Bitcoin. People say, okay, well, what's a monetary policy? Well, a monetary policy is something as follows. Um, Debt is infinite, right? That's a monetary policy. Cash is infinite. That's a monetary policy. Um, there's only 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be minted. That is a monetary policy. 100 million Satoshis make up one full Bitcoin. Again, that is a monetary policy. So basically, the policy, basically, in a different wording, it is a money rule, a rule as it accounts to money, a rule as it pertains to money. So when I say monetary policy, what I mean is the rules of the game, the rules of money. Um, and so what Bitcoin allows is a finite, transparent, global, digital, foundational architecture uh, that basically sets forth the standard of what money will be in the 21st century. Now, can governments and will governments continue to print money into oblivion and print debt into oblivion? Yes, they will. Will that affect Bitcoin? No, it won't actually. because there'll still only be 21 million Bitcoins. However, the interrelationship between Bitcoin priced in infinite money will continue to grow and grow and grow. Or for another term is appreciate, appreciate, appreciate. So it makes no difference whether you have one Bitcoin or whether you have 100,000 Satoshis or a million Satoshis, a fraction of a Bitcoin, right? The Satoshis are fractions of a Bitcoin. It makes no difference whether you have a lot of Bitcoin, like multiple coins or tokens rather, or whether you have the Satoshis that make up a Bitcoin. As long as you're participating in the network, you are per se, you're inherently participating in the train that's going in the opposite direction as an inflationary debasement of the global cash order that we currently live in today. So let's assume that you have, let's say, a million Satoshis, right? How is a million Satoshis going to get you to the version of the American dream that we are accustomed to? And again, as stated at the beginning of this podcast, the American dream, in my opinion, is the ability to quote unquote get rich, have a house, have a good education, buy things that you want and need, have a nice yard, have some children, be able to afford good food, maybe a vacation or two. All of that is going to require a savings technology that will beat inflation and beat the strategy of global fiat currencies, global currencies of the old world. So, in a lot of ways, having some Bitcoin will allow you to save towards a legacy version of the American dream without having some Bitcoin, Satoshis, like 100 million Satoshis, for example, which is one Bitcoin, or even a million Satoshis, for example, you will find it very, very, very difficult to achieve the American dream. But if you put some of your savings into Bitcoin and save it as a Satoshi over space and time, you will be able to eventually see that money quadruple, pentuple, or even 10x or 100x, even 500x or 1000x. It really just depends on what you want out of the investment. So I know several of my friends who have bought Bitcoin and who have sold their houses, sold their cars, sold their um, unnecessary expenses, basically living as frugal as possible so that they can get up to one Bitcoin. Now, obviously, one Bitcoin today is worth about 125 or $126,000, but back in the day, it wasn't really that expensive. You could sell a car, a nice luxury car, for $46,000, and then smash buy Bitcoin with the proceeds of that sale. That $46,000 now is worth $126,000. And so, as you can
Hmm.
see, and the person who did that, who will not be named here, but the person who did that is now able to save for their version of the American dream, whatever that may be. So, in a lot of ways, the American dream has become digital. I do not see a finance situation where uh, governments will stop printing money. I do see um, a future where the the money will become stronger. The financial currencies of different nation states will become stronger, but they'll become stronger by way of getting a hold of their budgets and also by way of adopting Bitcoin as a treasury asset. So, what do I mean by that? Well, there's a handful of countries around the world that have already adopted Bitcoin to hold it in their national treasury, similar to like a Fort Knox. And this action allows the nation state to basically prop up their financial posture in a way that makes it more attractive to investors who will want to buy their bonds, buy their debt. And then by buying their debt, basically they're able to convert that debt into cash to stimulate their economy. So this is why Bitcoin is becoming even more inclusive and more innovative in a world that needs pristine, undestructible, uh, sound monetary policy collateral. And that's what's happening today. It's happening a lot faster than I expected it to happen. I think by 2030, we'll be probably at halfway saturation. And by 2040, we'll be at full saturation of the global economy into a Bitcoin sound, money based sound economy. It'll burn a lot of people because they didn't get on board earlier. But this is what happens when you ignore radical new technologies. Technology, as Blockbuster video will show you, and as other previous episodes that I've made will show you, is that those who ignore these technologies, they do so at their own peril. They will get their shirts handed to them in by holding on to the past. Um, yeah. Okay. So we talked a little bit about what the American dream is. We talked about what it means to me and how it can be very subjective. We'll say that if you think that the American dream is to get rich and then uh, basically be able to afford all the things that you want to afford, then I will say that the means to get there is fundamentally broken in several respects. Employment broken, uh, opportunity limited, future technology converging, causing a lot of employment issues, wages stagnant, uh, corporate or business uh, loyalty uh, absent. So the means to achieve the American dream today is very much different. And that difference is that Bitcoin is one of the few ways to achieve the American dream today. How do you do that? Well, you save in Bitcoin terms. Is if you have cash savings, what you do is you immediately convert it into Satoshis. Used to be able, you could buy a whole Bitcoin with your cash savings, but at the end of each week, if you have $50, convert it to Satoshis. At the end of each month, if you have $100, convert it to Satoshis. So what you're doing is you're basically playing the long game. The long game is over time that the means of affordability over time in a Satoshi saving protocol will exceed what you're able to return in stocks and also what you're able to return in other forms of investments. So therefore, what's going to end up happening is a American dream at the end of the day. This is the new American dream. The new American dream is to work, be able to afford to live in America, whether it be rent or whether it be housing, and to save in Satoshi terms. Those that is going to be and is the method to achieve the version of the American dream. I want to say one last thing is that this podcast, this episode is not about America. It's not about the United States. It's about an, a vision or a belief referred to as the American dream. It is not a comment or an affront or criticism of any political party or of any government entity. It is only a commentary on my personal opinion on whether achieving the so-called American dream is feasible today. I'll also address some alternatives to achieving the American dream and also how those alternatives are not as good as Bitcoin. And I'll explain why. So the main alternatives are stocks. Obviously, you know about the NASDAQ, S&P 500. You'll also know about um, venture capital endeavors, which you have to be an insider and worth, I think, over $2 million to be a venture capital fun person, somebody who, let's say, what else? Real estate, whether it be mom and pop residential real estate, or whether it be Airbnbs, or whether it be commercial real estate, every single form of real estate right now is unaffordable. All the stocks are inflated beyond historical norms. Gold is inflated beyond historical norms, and so is silver. So the point I'm trying to make here is that all the cash from the preceding 2 or 3 generations have been pumped up into the existing financial instruments or assets, including stocks, real estate, bonds, um, corporate corporate venture capital funds. Um, let's see what else, real estate, and as a result, you're going to see those um, those pumped up bubble assets deflate quickly, probably at minimum 15, 20, 30%, something like that. And newer assets such as Bitcoin are not as inflated as those older uh, assets, largely because for the longest time, the last 4 or 5 years, particularly in the Biden administration, Bitcoin, or excuse me, banks, institutions, hedge funds, endowment funds, they were legally not allowed to go out and buy Bitcoins. I believe it was in early 2025 or late 2024, the first United States exchange traded fund opened to allow uh, pension funds, retirement funds, corporate entities, financial giants such as Fidelity and Vanguard to purchase Bitcoin exchange traded funds, spot Bitcoin exchange traded funds. Uh, that was a historic marker in the Bitcoin adoption story. And basically, I don't want to go too much about what an ETF is from a financial and legal point of view, but I will say that an exchange traded fund or ETF is, you can look at it conceptually as a dam that has been opened that allows a flood of cash into the Bitcoin ecosystem. So that has already happened, and we're slowly starting to see it. We have a president, President Trump, who is supportive of this Bitcoin space and crypto ecosystem. And so I think you're going to see something you've never seen before uh, in probably since the roaring 20s, uh, where, or probably since the dot com boom, but it'll be bigger than the dot com boom because there's more capital and cash floating around the planet today. You're going to see a huge, huge run up here in a second in 2025 and also in 2026. The Trump administration is not over. And also, Trumpism, which is what I refer to as Trumpism, this notion of renationalization and rebalancing the give and takes of the global markets. That is going to be coming, and it's slowly coming online, and it will not end with Trump. It will continue for at least another 8 years after Trump is in office. So all those things point to a a dream that is slowly but surely coming to pass over time. That's all I got. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and I hope you make it a great day.